Tonight, Humza Yousaf quits as Scotland's First Minister, just over a year after being elected. So who will take over next? Yousaf admits that he underestimated the hurt and upset he caused when he ended the SNP's power-sharing deal with the Scottish Greens and says politics can be a brutal business. John Swinney has emerged as the favourite to be his successor, as party big beasts urge him to stand. But is the process being stitched up by the men in grey suits? I'll ask the SNP Deputy Leader, Keith Brown. Are we joined live by the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Douglas Ross, who's claiming it was his party that pushed Yousaf over the edge. And where next for the SNP and the cause of Scottish independence? I'll speak to the former First Minister and Alba party leader, Alex Salmond. Also tonight, as the Irish government gets ready to publish emergency legislation allowing asylum seekers to be sent back to the UK, Downing Street insists the UK won't take them unless wider EU asylum rules are changed. Can the Conservatives prevent Labour rebuilding their red wall in the north of England? We'll have a special report and bring you the latest polling on 2 of Thursday's crucial mayoral contests. And as the parties pump out pretty slick social media videos to sway your vote, we'll look back at a more innocent time when they were struggling to cross the digital divide. It's Monday, I'm Sophy Ridge live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. Well, it's been a hugely significant day in politics. Humza Yousaf, the First Minister of Scotland, has stepped down. Why did he do it? Who's going to replace him? How much significance does it have for the wider fate of the SNP? Well, we'll discuss all of that on the show tonight. But there's something else that I've been thinking a lot about today as well. So Humza Yousaf became First Minister in March 2023. So he's only been in the job for just over a year. Now, don't get me wrong, in comparison to Liz Truss, he's a leadership veteran, but still, a year. I mean, that's not very long, is it? And it feels the wider change in the SNP's fortunes has happened at a whiplash speed. The dominant force in Scottish politics for so long, now still dominant, but under more pressure than at any time in over a decade. Whether it's the former chief executive of the party charged with embezzlement, or the failure to live up to promises on climate or education, or a Labour Party that's resurgent in Scotland, the SNP has an electoral fight ahead of it. Humza Yousaf, in many ways, is a child of the SNP's summer, and many believe ill-prepared to fight in these changing conditions. But still, a year in the job. I mean, just 48 hours ago, he was telling Sky News that he would defy a vote of no confidence. It really does show how quickly modern political power can simply evaporate. Well, during the show, we're going to be talking to Humza Yousaf's deputy, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, and the former First Minister, Alex Salmond. But first, here's our Scotland correspondent, Conor Gillies.
His face said it all.
I have therefore informed the SNP's National Secretary of my intention to stand down as party leader.
A First Minister engulfed in crisis after sacking the Greens from his government.
Unfortunately, in ending the Bute House agreement in the manner that I did, I clearly underestimated the level of hurt and upset that caused Green colleagues. For a minority government to be able to govern effectively and efficiently, trust when working with the opposition is clearly fundamental.
Outside, a stunned silence as the chaos unfolded.
To my wonderful wife, my beautiful children, and my wider family for putting up with me over the years, I'm afraid you will be seeing a lot more of me from now. And who could ask for a better country to lead than Scotland? Thank you very much.
First Minister, you made a famous calculation. Have you left the party in a worse state?
A leader who arguably sabotaged himself after burning bridges in a week of high drama.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
Defiant in this, his last public appearance just 2 days ago, speaking exclusively to Sky News, facing the prospect of relying on Alex Salmond's Alba party in that vote. His support would have come at a cost. The day began with Humza Yousaf's closest advisers here in Edinburgh telling me that cowing to Alex Salmond's demands would be like doing a deal with the devil. And there were real fears within the SNP of them becoming a puppet of their bitter rival. It simply was not going to happen. The immediate future of the SNP could now lie in his hands.
Catherine.
Sturgeon and Yousaf ally John Swinney preparing to steady the ship.
I'm giving very careful consideration to standing to be the leader of the SNP. I've been somewhat overwhelmed by the requests that have been made of me to do that, with many messages from many colleagues across the party. So I'm giving that issue very active consideration.
Those close to Kate Forbes say she is also considering a bid, while others with leadership ambitions step aside.
Serious times demand serious politics and serious people, and the best person to take that forward now for the Scottish National Party is John Swinney, to be able to provide that stability that the public are crying out for.
As the continuing police probe examining SNP finances threatens to further political damage in this election year, opponents sense opportunity.
What is happening now with the SNP is that the mask is slipping. People in Scotland are realising that public services are worse, educational standards are falling, there's a crisis in the NHS.
I despair at the situation in Scotland. It's absolute chaos now from the Scottish Parliament, from the SNP. So you've got chaos in the Scottish Parliament, you've got chaos in the Westminster Parliament, and the Scottish people are being fundamentally let down.
He may have run out of road, the political miscalculation that proved fatal. The next one will have to pick up the pieces and deal with the electoral consequences. Conor Gillis, Sky News in Edinburgh.
Well, we can speak now to Keith Brown, who's Deputy Leader of the SNP. Thank you for being on the programme tonight. We just heard Conor Gillies, our Scotland correspondent, say how the next leader of the SNP is going to have to pick up the pieces. Who do you think that leader should be?
Well, I've set out criteria which I think should apply to whoever's the next leader, and that means we should have somebody that's willing to engage. You have to do that in a parliament of minorities. Somebody that's experienced and somebody that will bring unity, hopefully to the parliament, but certainly to the party. So I think somebody who fulfils those criteria, and I think one of those that does that would be John Swinney, but there may well, of course, be others as well.
You're talking about John Swinney there. I'll be honest, it's a name that we've been hearing increasingly often as the day has gone on. Just to read you a tweet by the SNP's Joanna Cherry. She said, as Humza, who should be thanked for his service, will remain First Minister until we have a new leader, there's no need for an unseemly rush by the old boys club to stitch up the succession. The leader of the SNP should be chosen by our members, not by men in grey suits. Now, I know, of course, you're saying that there may be others. John Swinney is your preferred candidate. Everyone can have a preferred candidate. But it does feel a little bit like we might be heading towards the men in grey suits stitching this up. How important do you think it is for the SNP to have a contest and not a coronation?
Well, I think the SNP membership will decide that, but just on your point about an old boys club, I should point out, of course, that in the Scottish Parliament we have more SNP MSPs.
Well, that's
female
Joanna
than
Cherry's phrase, old boys club, not mine, just to be clear. It's Joanna Cherry's phrase.
Yeah. Well, she's mentioned the phrase old boys club. Most of the cabinet, the majority of the cabinets are female, and of course we had a very lengthy period with a female leader, so anybody can come forward for this contest. I just mentioned John Swinney as one person that meet the criteria, which I think are very important for the new leader, whoever that is. And of course we should be willing to see anybody that wants to come forward to undertake a bid to become leader. But I think those criteria, experience, willingness to engage and to unify, are very important.
You've seen a relatively rapid overturn of leaders. Humza Yousaf, of course, didn't have a mandate from the Scottish people. He didn't have an election in Holyrood. The next leader won't either. Because the next election isn't due until 2026, do you think the new leader of the SNP should call an election?
No, I don't. In Scotland, we have a fixed-term parliament set by Westminster. People elected MSPs in 2021. They expect them to serve a 5-year term. And I would point out to those that are calling for it, in particular the Labour Party, I think they've had 8 leaders in the time that we've had 2 leaders. They've also, I think, had 3 former First Ministers that didn't have an election when they became First Ministers. They've also had Gordon Brown, and even going back to Jim Callaghan in the 70s, and they just elected a new First Minister in Wales without an election. So I think in Scotland what people are interested in is making sure we don't end up, as has happened in the rest of the UK, having to pay prescription charges with the huge council tax hikes that we've seen in the rest of the UK as well. And they're safeguarded in those things by a continuing
Just to come in on the election
government.
point, because I do think it's important. I can't help thinking that, if another party went through 2 leaders in quick succession without going to the British people, the SNP would be quick out of the blocks saying, accusing them of not having a mandate. That's what you would do, isn't it?
I think it's important to bear in mind the circumstances. So if you think about Liz Truss, the chaos that surrounded Liz Truss, or Boris Johnson, or Rishi Sunak initially as well, or Theresa May, it's because of the chaos. And also the fact is, of course, in Scotland, we can't just call an election. It's a 5-year term. People vote for that. And also,
it's a fixed term parliament in the UK and the rest of the UK
common
as well.
Across Europe.
Let's just listen to, we don't have to imagine what the SNP would do. Let's just listen to what Nicola Sturgeon has previously said. I think we can hear.
He should call an early general election. He's the second person in a row to be appointed as Prime Minister by Tories, not elected by the population. The idea that he can go 2 years before seeking or winning a democratic mandate, I think, is just unthinkable.
So Nicola Sturgeon saying it would be unthinkable for the PM in Westminster to go 2 years before seeking a democratic mandate. It would be unthinkable for the next leader of the SNP to go 2 years without seeking a democratic mandate, wouldn't it?
Well, the democratic mandate that we sought and got in 2021 was for a 5-year term of this Parliament. That's set. It's not something, as with Westminster, where they agree they'll have fixed terms and then just change it. We can't do that in Scotland. People understood they were voting. 64 out of 129 MSPs were much bigger than any other party. We've governed, in my view, extremely well. We've got a far better health service, despite what you hear from Keir Starmer, than his party in Wales. And they've got the right to expect continuity in government, and that's what we'll deliver from the SNP. We won't have the council tax increases, the prescription charges, the tuition fees. We'll continue to govern in the interest of the people of Scotland.
It's interesting, you're saying there you're proud of your record, that the health service doing better in Wales. I should point out that 1 in 6 Scots are still on an NHS waiting list. For a decade, it's felt like the SNP has almost defied political gravity. Do you feel that recently that's changed?
Well, first of all, in the waiting figures, I noticed in Wales it's 1 in 5 people on waiting lists. We've not had a single day strike in our health service because of pay disputes. That's Humza Yousaf's work and Nicola Sturgeon's work. So we do have a far better health service. We perform much better in terms of A&E figures as well. And in relation to the SNP, we have the strongest party by far. We have far more members than any other party, far more seats here at Westminster and in the Scottish Parliament. We're a very strong party, and there's 2 reasons for that. One is because, unlike the other parties, we will always stand up for Scotland. We don't answer to another head office elsewhere. And also our belief in independence gives us that driving force, that driving focus, which is absent that we see from what we see in other parties who, like the Labour Party just now in Scotland, play political games all the time without having any serious perspectives for government. So I think the SNP remains very strong. I'm not trying to wish away the issues which have been taking place over the last few weeks and months. Of course they're serious, but now we have to get down to business, get a new First Minister and crack on with governing in the interest of the people of Scotland.
So if the SNP's got such a... Well done, by the way, with the noise behind you. It's always hard in these circumstances. But just listening to you, SNP, great record, things are going really well. Humza Yousaf was a great leader. What's gone wrong?
Well, we have had, obviously, the issues that have arisen over the course of the last week in terms of the agreement with the Greens and the way that was ended. The First Minister was quite honest and upfront, very bravely today, to say he thinks he could have handled that in a different way. So that's the most immediate recent thing. But of course we have had issues in the party in the absence or following the resignation of Nicola Sturgeon. Now, I would point out we have been 17 years in government. We've been continuously re-elected by the people of Scotland. So it's not just me that's saying the SNP is doing a good job. We have a better health service. We've got higher paid nurses, higher paid police officers, higher paid doctors. We have better public services in general, despite what you hear all the time from people that really don't know about the situation in Scotland, like Jeremy Hunt on your programme or Keir Starmer. We are doing well, and the people of Scotland, like the SNP government, we have to make sure now we repay that trust. We get a new First Minister and we carry on dealing with the interests of the people of Scotland who are suffering under the effects of Westminster in terms of the cost of living crisis, the energy costs. We are trying to help people with that. Lifted 100,000 children out of poverty this year with the child payment. So we are doing the right things. We have to keep on doing them. It will be different and challenging now because, of course, in a parliament of minorities, you have to seek agreement to get those measures through, but that's what we'll try to do.
OK, thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme today. Keith Brown there.
Thank you.
Well, we can speak now to our Scotland correspondent, Conor Gillies, who was listening across that. What did you make of what Keith Brown had to say, Conor?
Well, he's defiant. He is the deputy leader of the SNP, staring down the barrel of yet another leadership contest after a very bruising day, a very bruising week. We understand that the National Executive Committee of the SNP is due to meet in the coming days. Last time nominations were open for around 2 weeks. Will they go for the same process, or will they shorten that, given the candidates that seem to be sort of hinting that they may or may not enter the race? The candidate list, the runners and riders at the start of the day, seems to have dwindled as the hours have gone by. That race to replace is very much underway. But let's just take a step back after such a major day. This arguably was a mess of Humza Yousaf's own making. And is he tonight riddled with the regret that if he had not made those decisions, those fatal decisions last Thursday involving the Greens, he would not be in the mess that he was today, and he would still be standing as Scotland's First Minister and the leader of the SNP. It is hard to see how he will not be riddled with that regret, clearly, as he is now heading out the door.
And Conor, it feels like for over a decade, the SNP have almost defied political gravity in Scotland. Do you think that there's any sense that this is changing?
Well, if we look at the polls from the recent past, Labour are certainly set to gain from any political trouble that this is causing the SNP. But, and it's a big but, Humza Yousaf stepping aside, a new leader stepping into the fray, will they prove more popular than him? And will they be a leader that unites the party? And that is the key position here. The SNP is in a perilous position. It is lurching from crisis to crisis, and they will now be looking squarely at who can steady the ship, who can bring back the coordination within the party to something of electoral success ahead of this year. Two names clearly in the frame tonight, although they haven't formally confirmed they are standing. John Swinney, a grandee of the party, well respected by many, a close ally of Nicola Sturgeon and Humza Yousaf. But there is some criticism if he was to essentially be if it was a coronation for him, then what would that mean for the wider party in terms of resetting and being that fresh face to lead the party forward? That is not potentially, as some would argue, who Mr Swinney would be. And then that begs the question if Kate Forbes throws her hat in the ring. Let's remember she got almost 50% of the vote last time around. Did the party learn any lessons from the way she was treated in the aftermath of that? Let's remember she's no longer in government and she's very much on the back benches. Does she fancy her chances? Well, we'll find out in the coming days.
Conor, thank you very much indeed. Conor Gillies there. Well, let's get some more reaction, shall we? Joining us now is Douglas Ross, who is the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. Great to have you here.
Good evening.
In the studio. What's your reaction to the events of the day then?
Well, I think it was inevitable. When Humza Yousaf dumped the Greens out of government just days after encouraging Green members across the country to continue to support the Bute House Agreement, you could see there was real anger from Green MSPs, which is why we calculated as Scottish Conservatives that the best chance of removing Humza Yousaf from office was a vote of no confidence confidence in him personally. Now, he said he would fight it, but over the weekend the numbers got closer and closer, and they were really very much on a knife edge, and he clearly concluded that he would lose that vote of no confidence. So I think we took the right approach to bring forward that vote of no confidence, which has led to him resigning today.
We've been talking about what happens next. Is there a leader of the SNP that you'd particularly fear? Who are you hoping it isn't?
Well, they're all going to promote independence. They are nationalists.
That's not my question.
No. But
what a surprise! They're all going to vote for independence. The question is, who would you fear the most?
Well, I don't think there's going to be a contest. I think, my reading of the situation now is John Swinney will be crowned as SNP leader with no contest, and I think as soon as next week there will be a vote in the Scottish Parliament to elect him as the First Minister.
Very much like the Conservatives then. They're taking a leaf out of your book.
Well, I just think you've seen countless senior politicians, both here at Westminster and in Edinburgh, back John Swinney. Of course, it's the same John Swinney that last year ruled himself out and said it was time for fresh talent to come through. And John Swinney, who's been in Alex Salmond's cabinet, Nicola Sturgeon's cabinet, and was one of Humza Yousaf's strongest supporters. So, as Conor was suggesting there, that's not really going to be a change. It will be more of the same, which is focusing on independence at the expense of the real priorities that people across Scotland have.
Do you think there should be an election in Holyrood?
Yes, we are supporting the vote of no confidence in the government as a whole, because we think we've got rid of Humza Yousaf. That Scottish Conservative vote of no confidence in him has seen him off, but we want to get rid of the entire SNP government.
So it's a bit like, you're the kind of Keir Starmer of Scotland then. You're saying that after 2 leaders without a mandate, it's time to go to the public.
Well, I'm just saying after 17 years of the SNP being in power...
Or 13 years of the Conservatives being in power.
After 17 years of the SNP... I was first elected in 2007 as a councillor. For my entire period in elected office, the SNP have been in charge of things in Scotland, and things have got worse. 1 in 7 Scots on an NHS waiting list. Our educational standards dropping through international rankings. The fact that we're not seeing the infrastructure investment, in my own area, the A9 and the A96, both promised to be dualled, not done under the SNP.
Keith Brown was saying that actually the NHS waiting list figures are better in Scotland than Wales, so actually they're doing a pretty good job.
No, actually, long waits. If you look at long waits, they're the worst anywhere in the United Kingdom. And my mailbox as both an MP and an MSP is full of people who can't see a GP, can't get an appointment to get surgery they urgently need. And we know more and more people in Scotland are going private because they can't wait in pain on Scotland's NHS.
Is the unspoken political truth that you actually need the SNP to do OK? Because if they don't, then you're at risk of Labour mopping up some of those former SNP seats in Scotland and Keir Starmer here in Westminster surging to a majority.
No, these are nationalists who want to divide our country all over again, just like they did in 2014. So I want to see as many of them removed from office as possible. We've started today with Humza Yousaf, but right across the country there are seats which the current, at the moment, First Minister said are straight fights between the SNP and the Scottish Conservatives. And we know in those areas where people have that choice, they're backing the Scottish Conservatives and we're winning.
You see, this is the thing I guess I really want to ask you. On a personal level, are you a bit frustrated? Because it feels like, the SNP have been dominant for over a decade. It almost felt like, whatever the opposition parties do, they were kind of floundering because of the SNP's dominance. Now, there is an opportunity for the opposition parties to do well. And yet, the Conservative Party, for many people, has become toxic because in Westminster they're talking about Rwanda, they're talking about culture wars. It's making your job a lot harder, isn't it? Well, personally, are you frustrated by that?
What we're seeing on the ground is in by-elections, and I know these are just a snapshot in a local area, but if you take Angus West, Arbroath West, in the Angus constituency, that's got an SNP MSP, an SNP MP, and last Thursday, the people of Angus West, Arbroath West, voted for a Scottish Conservative councillor. Our vote up 10.5%, the SNP vote down 7%. Well, I'm saying, so that's looking... Well, the polling is looking like we'll hold on to the seats that we currently have.
Congratulations for getting that councillor in, but how's your polling?
Well, it's suggesting that we can hold on to the seats that we currently have and we will make gains, because there are places across Scotland where it's a straight fight between the Scottish Conservatives and the SNP, and where there is that choice, people are supporting the Scottish Conservatives.
I guess what I'm asking is, strategically, if you were going in to see Rishi Sunak tomorrow, would you say, look, Forget about reform and the Red Wall. This is not helping us in seats like Scotland, where we could have a chance if we had a different message.
Well, I'm saying our message in Scotland is trust us to be a strong opposition to the SNP. We are a strong opposition. We brought forward that vote of no confidence, which has led to the First Minister resigning, and on so many other policy areas, which I think we will get into in the election. If you look at gender recognition reform that Nicola Sturgeon introduced, Anna Sawar whipped his MSPs to vote for it. If you look at the Hate Crime Act that Humza Yousaf introduced as Justice Secretary and implemented as First Minister, the Labour Party supported it. If you look at oil and gas, the SNP and the Labour position on oil and gas is the same. No new licences, no further exploration. It is the Scottish Conservatives in Holyrood and around the country that are providing that strong opposition to the SNP.
What about Rwanda? Are you personally comfortable with it?
Well, I think we have to do anything possible to prevent people making that perilous journey across the channel. We saw last week lives lost, and I want to see anything and everything done to stop people making those journeys.
So you support the policy
to stop people making
to
those dangerous
asylum seekers
to
to Rwanda.
stop those people making those dangerous journeys, and the people that benefit from that are the people traffickers, making thousands of pounds out of vulnerable people, some of whom never even reach these shores because they die on that crossing. So anything we can do to prevent them coming to this country, making that difficult journey, is something that we have to look at.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Douglas Ross, speaking to us there. You're watching the Politics Hub. Coming up, what next for the SNP, Scottish politics and the cause of Scottish independence? I'll speak to the former First Minister, Alex Salmond. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, will explain why this Thursday might tell us whether Rishi Sunak can hold the Red Wall in the next general election. And is the Rwanda plan really making migrants head to Ireland instead? Stay with us.
The humble pencil, a simple yet revolutionary invention. It's been used to write your favourite songs, stories that changed your life, and for when, well, you've changed your mind. Useful for having fun, for notes, research, to illustrate, and to vote. But on May the 2nd, the story won't end with your cross in the box. For detailed coverage, simply outlined, and a fresh perspective on the local elections. Get the full story first on Sky News.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. Well, there's a real sense now that people are beginning to expect that this whole airlift is coming to an end, and they're really, really desperate. We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people and putting them into trucks.
You either live and recover, or you die.
Okay, so that's like a war.
That's the war, yes.
We help you understand the world with us. Over the past 24 hours, the soldiers have been attacked on a number of occasions. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. They were convinced the United States would become hooked. Well, they were right.
An enormous explosion has just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world.
Thought I could throw a bit of head withdrawn. It's so hot.
Hello, welcome back. You're watching the Politics Hub on Sky News, the top stories. After Humza Yousaf's resignation as Scotland's First Minister, tonight attention is turning to who will succeed him, with John Swinney the favourite. Well, the Irish government is due to publish emergency legislation tomorrow to allow asylum seekers to be sent back to the UK. Downing Street's insisting it won't take them. We'll have more on this story in a moment with our Ireland correspondent Stephen Murphy. A new polling from YouGov tonight shows the two crucial mayoral elections this week in the West Midlands and Tees Valley are on a knife edge. We'll show you full details of that later. Plus, you can stay up to date with all the goings-on in Westminster on our digital politics hub by scanning the QR code at the bottom of your screen. Among the other stories we've been covering that you can read about today. Lord Cameron has been speaking at the World Economic Forum in Saudi Arabia, and he said that Hamas must leave Gaza for a two-state solution. He also said they should accept what he described as a generous ceasefire package that's been put on the table. MPs are debating whether there needs to be a change in the law to make assisted dying legal. A petition backed by Dame Esther Ranson has now been signed by more than 200,000 people. And don't forget, the latest episode of Politics at Jack and Sam's is out. There they are. This week they've been talking about the upcoming local and mayoral elections, as well as what's happened in the Scottish Government today. All that and more, just scan the QR code on the bottom of your screen. Right, let's get some more reaction to our top story tonight and the resignation of the Scottish First Minister, Humza Yousaf. Alex Salmond, leader of the Alba Party, former First Minister, joins us now live. Thank you very much for being with us. Mr Salmond, what's your reaction to what's happened today?
Well, firstly, on the human level, I do feel for Humza today. I've been there. I've done a resignation speech as First Minister. And whether you're First Minister or Prime Minister, most people, when they aspire in politics to get the top job, and therefore, despite all the trials, tribulations, frustrations, and everything else that goes on, it's a great wrench when you leave it. And that was evident in Humza Yousaf's speech today. So today I feel for Humza and his family, and I wish them well for the future.
I was quite struck by something that a source close to Humza Yousaf said to our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillies when there was a suggestion that your party, the Alba Party, could prop up the SNP government with your one MSP. They said that would be like doing a deal with the devil. What does it say that Humza Yousaf would prefer to collapse his own leadership rather than to do a deal with you?
Well, what it says is it's not true, because I saw that quote as well. But at 7 o'clock this morning, Humza Yousaf phoned Ash Regan about the proposal she'd put into him yesterday, complimented her on the proposals being very reasonable, and told her he was still trying to stay in his post. That was after, apparently, I was the devil. So I'm not certain that everybody around Humza Yousaf was acting in his best interests. And if I could give you another piece of evidence for that, this morning, the Times newspaper, full page, front page in Scotland, said Humza Yousaf is to resign. That proved to be accurate. And said that John Swinney was going to take his place. That might well be accurate. Now, I'm very puzzled by this, because that was so, next to the First Minister, close to the First Minister. And yet, at 7 o'clock this morning, Humza Yousaf was phoning Ash Regan, saying that the proposals she had made were very reasonable and trying to stay in his job. Now, these two things do not fit together. And I'm just wondering if the team around Humza Yousaf, that all of them were acting in his best interests, because to me, these two pieces of factual information don't fit together. So, right, let's just be really clear about what you're saying, because you're making some you're making some accusations here, or inferring some accusations here. Are you saying that you really believe that people in the SNP, the old guard, as I think you've called them perhaps today, people around Humza Yousaf, we're trying to get him out and John Swinney in? Is that what you think? Well, I'm putting together two facts. The front page, which is there for all to see, in the Times newspaper today, which says that Humza Yousaf was going to resign on sources very close to the First Minister, friends of the First Minister, and that John Swinney was to be placed in as interim First Minister. Now, nobody had spoken about John as a candidate up until I saw that story. Now, I'm trying to match that together with the phone call I know took place this morning, because I was told, I think it was 7:30 rather than 7 o'clock, because I was told shortly thereafterwards, where Humza Yousaf told Ash Regan that he was trying still to stay in the job, and said that the proposals the Alapa party made to him were very reasonable, as indeed they were. They were about independence, about protection of women and children in Scotland, and also about moving on to a people's agenda of housing, education, health, and above all, jobs. All of things which I know that Humza Yousaf would like to do. And I'm trying to match these two things together. One, that story was briefed last night, but at 7:30 this morning, Humza Yousaf told Ash Regan that our proposals were very reasonable, and he was trying to
what you think
stay
there was
his job.
effectively like a kind of backdoor coup by the men in grey suits?
Well, I'm saying that somebody briefed the Times newspaper. It certainly wasn't me. It had to be somebody very close to Humza Yousaf. I mean, look, in desperate political situations, right, people get together. The person who's behind the 8 ball, in this case, Humza Yousaf. I mean, these are dramatic times. Nobody gets very much sleep. There's always a chance of mistakes. But look, Humza's an honest guy, right? He used to work for me. He's an absolute honest guy. He wouldn't mislead. There was no reason to mislead Ash Regan this morning. No reason whatsoever. So as at 7:30 this morning, he was trying to stay in his job. He thought the Alapa proposals were reasonable. But last night, someone close to him had briefed that to the Times newspaper.
You say Humza Yousaf is an honest guy. Do you think John Swinney's an honest guy? He's the favourite.
Well, I mean, John was my finance secretary. I've got no animus against John Swinney. He was an excellent finance secretary. At that time, he's an overwhelming favourite to take the job now. The one thing, and I'm not going to pass verdict on who should be SNP leader, except to say this, that no contest, a coronation, a shoo-in, is not necessarily a good thing, because this will be the second time that the baton, to use Humza's phrase, has been handed on, from Nicola Sturgeon to Humza Yousaf and now to another candidate. If that person has no electoral mandate from the people and also has no mandate from the SNP members, it'll leave them in a very weak position. And I would think that even right now, the Tory and Labour leaders in Scotland are dusting down the quotes from the SNP in Westminster about what they said when the Tory party changed the Prime Minister 3 times. Now this would be the SNP changing the First Minister 3 times, and possibly without even a mandate from the party membership, never mind a mandate from the Scottish people.
Now, I have to say, some people listening to you are probably, watching TV, wanting to throw things at the screen right now. Some people in the SNP see you as part of the, part of the reasons, I guess, for the division. They might be thinking, here he is, at it again, throwing mud at the SNP, making these kind of implications around, all this kind of innuendo around Humza Yousaf and those around him. He's at it again, divisive problems that are not helping the independence cause. What would you say to them?
Well, 2 things. My political opponents say many things about me, but I don't think anybody's ever doubted my dedication to the independence cause. The quarrel I have with the Scottish National Party at the present moment, and what Ash Regan was trying to partially fix in the proposal she was making to Humza Yousaf, is that they haven't seen independence as an immediate priority for some considerable time. And the reason for the formation of Alapa and the reason for the Alapa campaign is to try and get independence back up the political agenda in Scotland. So whatever else might be said about by whoever else, then they're not going to doubt my commitment to Scottish independence. And as for the stuff about what happened in the Time newspaper and what happened this morning on a phone call, I mean, I'm just putting together 2 facts. I'm not making it up. Both of these things are true, and people can draw their own conclusions. I mean, I would have much preferred that we didn't allow a situation where a Tory motion of no confidence was to drum a nationalist First Minister out of office. And I think those who were prepared to support that, not so much the Tory and Labour side, because they've been the Better Together coalition for many years in Scotland, but the Green Party, for example, in a fit of pique, really have got some questions to answer about their commitment to Scottish independence, which is why the Alapa tried to be so constructive through this process, offering Humza Yousaf a reasonable formulation which would have allowed him certainly to survive the votes of confidence if he'd been able to accept them. Now, for whatever reason, he found he wasn't able to, but it certainly wasn't the content of the proposals, because, as I said, he himself described them as very reasonable.
Mr Salmond, we are out of time. Thank you for being on the Politics Hub this evening.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Coming up next on the Politics Hub. What next for the Red Wall and Rishi Sunak? We'll have a special report from our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, on Thursday's crucial set of elections. And is the Rwanda scheme already working as a deterrent? Both the UK and Irish governments think it is, with reports that migrants are entering the Republic via Northern Ireland. That's coming up next. Hello, welcome back. Now, the government had hoped that their Rwanda policy would have a speedy impact, but the Northern Ireland Secretary today said he was surprised that it was apparently working so quickly after Ireland claimed that the threat of being sent to Rwanda was responsible for migrants coming to Ireland instead. Now, the Irish government today announced it would introduce emergency legislation as early as tomorrow to combat the flow of migrants arriving in the Republic from Northern Ireland. Here's our Ireland correspondent, Stephen Murphy.
More migrants making the Channel crossing today. Home Office figures show more than 7,000 have arrived in the UK so far this year, but will it be their final destination? The Irish government thinks many migrants, now fearful of being sent to Rwanda, will cross another sea, travelling to Northern Ireland before arriving here in Dublin. The government has simply run out of accommodation, so male refugees must camp out in a makeshift tent city outside the Asylum office. Jad is from Jordan and came to Dublin from London via Belfast. He says the Rwanda policy is the reason why.
Because I was afraid and heard from a lot of people that they will send you to Rwanda. So I was so afraid that they will do this. So Ireland was much better. It's a very cruel policy, to be honest. It's not good.
Sammy from Nigeria was living in Leicester. He's another new arrival from across the Irish border. He didn't feel safe showing his face on camera.
I wanted to seek asylum in the UK, but I heard about the Rwanda bill from friends, and I felt I wouldn't want to go back to Africa because I don't feel safe in Africa.
As immigration becomes a hot topic in Irish politics, Dublin reckons 80% of refugees here have come from Britain via the open border with Northern Ireland. There's no way of knowing for sure, and some dispute that estimate. The Prime Minister today ruled out any deal with Ireland to accept returned refugees, something echoed by his Northern Ireland Secretary.
Any agreement on returns, we've been told all the way through since we left the European Union that the UK must deal with the European Union as a whole entity.
The Irish Deputy Prime Minister tried his best to downplay tensions between the two governments.
Both governments are committed to working together in the time ahead to dealing with issues, many issues, including migration. There is no doubt that migration is an enormous challenge.
It's hard to escape the sense that many stuck here feel they're now being treated as little more than political pawns. The people that end up here on this street in Dublin really don't care about deterrent policies or intergovernmental wrangling. They just want a roof over their head, and if it can't be in the UK, then they hope it will be here in Ireland.
The Irish government fought long and hard for an invisible border during Brexit. Now it must figure out how to deal with one of its consequences as Britain's Rwanda policy increases the pressure. Stephen Murphy, Sky News in Dublin.
Well, Stephen joins us now live. Stephen, I have to say, I've been in political journalism so long, I can't help but feel quite cynical when I get stories like this. I can see why Number 10 benefit by saying that this is an issue, and I can see why the Irish government benefit by saying it's an issue. What is the reality?
Well, the reality is that figure has sort of just been taken at face value for the last few days, which has fueled this row. And that figure coming from the Irish government, that 80% of the refugees seeking protection here in Dublin at this office have not applied for protection already at a port of entry into Ireland, so for example, Dublin Airport. So therefore, according to officials here, to their estimate, they must have come over the invisible border with Northern Ireland. So they're coming from Britain, and then the Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland, Micheál Martin, added his conjecture to that a couple of days ago, that it was in fact the Rwanda policy that was driving that surge in refugees seen here and at places like this. And you can see there are hundreds of people here camping out as they wait for protection here. Today we found about 5 or 6 people that were willing to speak to us and willing to attribute their journey from Britain through Northern Ireland and to Ireland directly due to the Tories' policy on Rwanda. So there is certainly some reality there, but that figure is also just an estimate. There is no hard data point because that border, of course, is unmonitored. So it is really based on some estimate here. And there are human rights organisations that we've spoken to here in Ireland today that dispute it and don't think that that is an accurate depiction of the true scale, the true impact of the British government's Rwanda policy. But of course it suits Rishi Sunak very, very well, particularly ahead of this coming Thursday, that the Irish government has come out practically unprompted and paid tribute to the effectiveness of the Rwanda policy already by attributing a huge surge in refugees coming here to Ireland directly because of that. So today we saw that the Irish government's going to have to bring forward some sort of legislation to try and navigate its way around it. But Rishi Sunak already immediately said, look, we're not going to have a deal with Ireland to take anyone back because we want to deal with the EU so that, for example, France will take back the refugees that we want to send back across the Channel. So it is a political row, but it's hard sometimes to remember at the heart of all this is people, and the people here that we spoke today really do feel they're now being used as pawns in a much wider political game.
Stephen, thank you very much indeed. Stephen Murphy there, reporting from Dublin. Well, we've been focusing on leadership and elections in Scotland, but there's also a huge set of local elections this week where the Conservatives are bracing themselves for heavy losses. 10 high-profile Metro mayors are also being elected, and there's also a by-election in Blackpool South. Well, our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has been looking ahead.
Can I have a photograph, please?
May 2021, a shock by-election win in Hartlepool. Boris Johnson triumphing where his party hadn't in decades.
That's our mission anyway. Look at this guy.
Changing the face of British politics for a generation.
Are you here in Hartlepool for good, or is this a one-off win?
Or so it seemed.
It's been a long 3 years for the Conservative Party. It was on this exact spot that was the high tide of Boris mania. He conquered the Red Wall. But the picture today is very different, both nationally and here in the northeast.
And that's what we're proving is the case on Teesside.
Tees Valley Mayor Ben Houchen has become a poster boy of Tory devolution. A close ally of the ex-PM, he romped to re-election in 2021 with over 70% of the vote. But with Johnson gone, will this old Labour heartland turn red again?
Thank you very much.
This chippy was a campaign stop in 2021.
Yeah, see you.
Lovely to see you in Hartlepool.
Diners now have less appetite for the party in power.
Do you think if Boris Johnson was still Prime Minister right now, the Tories would be in with a better shout round here?
Possibly. He was such a character, larger-than-life character, and so people like that.
If you were to put Ben Houchen alongside Rishi Sunak, it's clear which one you prefer?
Well, Ben Houchen he looks like he's a leader. I don't think Rishi Sunak probably has proved that to anybody.
What's your view of the Conservatives more generally at the moment?
Very disappointed. The first time that I'd voted Conservative and I felt they let me down.
Might you vote for Ben Houchen at the mayoral race, though?
I might.
And the reason for that is?
Because he's bringing investment into the area, and this area needs investment.
With his party and its leader well behind in the polls, the mayor's campaign has one clear message.
Morning, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone.
Ben. You have to look very, very closely at his adverts to find the word Conservatives or any other link to Rishi Sunak's party. Local investment is at the heart of the mayor's personal brand. Hartlepool's town shopping centre is promised a major renewal, but locals' patience is wearing thin.
You've lived here for decades. Have you seen levelling up since the Tories came in?
Levelling up. Well, that's a joke as well, isn't it? You level up in London, but you don't level up in the northeast of England.
Levelling up was a good idea, it just didn't happen?
It hasn't happened. It has not happened.
Ben Houchen's ambitions are so grand, they now span land and sea.
Just like Boris Johnson, Ben Houchen loves talking up massive, wildly ambitious building projects. He's promising to look into tunnelling underneath the River Tees, underneath that port to Redcar, 12 miles away.
For Labour, victory here would be a mighty turnaround and a big step in rebuilding the Red Wall.
So whilst there's an appearance of big projects going up and a lot of announcements, people on the doorstep are saying to me that they're not actually seeing the difference.
What odds do you give yourself of winning?
I'm not a betting man. I'm not a betting man.
Ben Houchen may buck the trend in this corner of the Red Wall, which would be a ray of light for Rishi Sunak in an otherwise dismal set of results, because it could demonstrate the party losing its grip on parts of the north that lent their vote to Boris Johnson.
From east coast to west, so many seats Labour must win back to regain power. At the other end of the Red Wall, there's a vacancy in Blackpool. This a Labour seat for 2 decades, until Boris Johnson came along. But now the scandal-hit Conservative MP has resigned. And Labour are confident they're on to a winner.
Place your bets.
Would you be voting Tory at the next election?
No, definitely not. I'll vote anybody to get the Tories out, anyone.
If Boris Johnson was still in, do you think the Tories would have a chance around here?
Yeah.
Probably. Probably, sadly.
Do you feel like big personalities have a big impact on the electorate?
100%. People like to be entertained, and I believe that Boris Johnson was the entertainment for the nation.
With Boris Johnson gone and little levelling up money falling their way,
Get set, go!
could the absence of larger-than-life figures be a handicap in the two-horse race for number 10?
Number 2 is your winner.
Sam Coates, Sky News, Blackpool.
We can see a full list of candidates for the Tees Valley mayoral election on your screen right now. And here's the full list of candidates for the Blackpool South by-election. And we'll have coverage of those alongside all of the twists and turns of the local elections as well. Speaking of twists and turns with the local elections, let's talk now to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. And you, in the last hour or so, have got some polling in that I have to say I found pretty interesting. What's the polling?
YouGov have decided to do polling on the eve of the election about the two key races that we're all studying. It's hard, but they've done it. Let's start with the Tees Valley mayoralty. That's what you were just watching with Ben Houchen. And they say that as far as they can see, Ben Houchen retains a lead. It's not a massive lead. It's down from 73% when this seat was last fought. He's dropped to 51%, but a clear lead over Chris McEwen, the Labour candidate. The Lib Dems far behind there. I have to say, Ben Houchen returning 73% of the 65 and plus votes. He's held on to old people, but other sections of the community less keen on him, but still ahead.
I mean, this is really significant, isn't it? Because, look, we're viewing the local elections and the mayoral elections through the prism of Rishi Sunak, whether he's going to hang on, if there's going to be a leadership challenge. If he manages to, or Ben Houchen, I should say, manages to hang on in Tees Valley, that could be a big deal. And the other one is the West Midlands, right?
That's right. Both Ben Houchen and Andy Street, they will determine whether or not Rishi Sunak is ousted from number 10 if it goes very badly. And here, YouGov have another call. Now, it's a 2-point lead for Andy Street, the Tory incumbent. YouGov say these figures are essentially too close to call. Look, it's just 39% for the Labour candidate versus 41%. And actually, you could see the Lib Dem, Reform, Green and the independent George Galloway-backed candidate totalling much more than the 2%. You squeeze these and that might determine the outcome, which is why actually the issue of Gaza, which the independent is fighting on, is quite so relevant in this election.
I mean, so close, on a knife edge. We're going to have so much coverage, by the way, we should say, of these local elections. Me and Sam both there Friday and Saturday for you to talk you through all the results as they come in. What are you picking up? How safe or not do you think Rishi Sunak is?
For months, Sophie, we have been saying that Thursday could be a red-letter day for the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, if he loses half of his local councillors, if he loses all these combined mayoralties like the ones that we've been looking at. He's almost certain, many people think in Tory and Labour Party, to lose the Blackpool South by-election, which you saw at the end of the film. But this polling suggests that Rishi Sunak's in with a chance of holding on both. If he does that, maybe loses slightly less. Could it be Labour, who've been ramping up expectations, who then end up having to do some explaining?
Sam, thank you very much indeed. Well, not long to find out, because Politics Hub will be on air later in the week to bring you all of the fallout from those elections, with 2 special 2-hour programmes on Friday and Saturday between 7 and 9 p.m. Me and Sam will be there in the daytimes as well. It's going to be a big week. See you tomorrow at 7 p.m.